This is your Q&A time writing at 240 words per minute. Your proper names are Sean Sibley, Scott, Europe, Paris, New York, New Year's, and San Francisco. Ready? Did he tell you what kind of business it was that he had on the 14th?
Business with his boss, and I'm not sure specifically the details of this meeting.
Now, even though that was a discussion, he still went ahead and got the tuxedo?
Yes.
And did you indicate to him what would happen if he wasn't able to make it to this formal?
That I would attend anyway.
Okay, so going back to Sean's party, we are on the 11th moving forward. Did you end up having a conversation with Sean Sibley after her party before your formal?
Yes.
Did you learn anything from her about the conversation that you had with the defendant on December 9th?
On which day?
When you're talking after her party?
Yes.
Before the formal?
Yes.
Did you talk to her about it? Let me back up. You had the conversation with the defendant about losing his wife on December 9th?
Yes.
So you're talking with Sean after her party. Does that conversation come up?
Yes.
Does she tell you whether she knew? Does she tell you something?
Yes.
Without getting into the content, does she tell you something about the conversation with the defendant?
Yes.
Based on the information that she gives to you in this conversation, do you do anything with it?
Yes.
What do you do?
I confronted Scott with it.
And tell us about that.
When he was at my house on the 14th, we were getting ready for the formal, and I brought up that discussion with him while we were getting ready about my conversation with Sean Sibley about him and I, or his discussion with me about losing his wife.
Did you confront him with the fact that he had told Sean before you?
Yes.
Did he respond to that?
Yes.
What did he say?
Sorry. Can you ask me that question again, please? I'm sorry.
Well, when you confronted him about him telling Sean Sibley that he had lost his wife before he told you about it,
Yes.
did you ask him about that?
Yes.
And what did he tell you?
Well, I had told him that I was troubled with all this information that I had learned, that I didn't know that Sean and he had talked about it previously or well before he had confronted me with it. And he said that that was something he was going to share with me when he returned back from his trip to Europe. But he knew that really wasn't the right thing to have done. He knew that he should have come to me and shared that information with me.
Now, let's kind of break this up into little pieces. When the defendant comes to you on December 9th and he tells you this about losing his wife, that he had lost his wife, did you have any idea that he was doing this because of the conversation he had with Sean Sibley?
No.
Did the defendant, when he came to you on December 9th, ever tell you that he had had a conversation with Sean Sibley?
No.
When you got this information from him that he had lost his wife on December 9th, did you think that he was telling you this of his own free will?
Yes.
When you found out from Sean that she had already had a conversation with the defendant, did that somewhat change your thinking about why he hadn't come to you?
Yes.
And as part of this, you were saying you confronted him with this information. Is that part of the confrontation? I mean, is that one of the reasons why you were asking him why he's telling you now?
Yes.
The answer is yes?
Yes.
When you said that his response was that he was going to tell you after he got back from his trip, what trip are you talking about?
He had plans of going to Paris for New Year's, and he was going to be gone for January on a business trip in Europe.
Have the defendant told you about this before the 14th?
Yes.
When did he first tell you about going to Paris for business, this trip that he was going to take?
When did he first tell me?
That's right.
On our first date.
So back in November, he had told you this?
December 20th, yes.
So he tells you he's going to tell you after he comes back?
Yes.
Did he tell you why he changed his mind?
Not that I recall on that.
Does he come to your house on the 14th?
Yes.
Tell us about what happens when he first gets to your house on the 14th.
He greeted me at the door with a dozen red roses.
So he walks in and hands them to you?
After he gave me a hug and hello, yes.
So he hands you these dozen roses?
Yes.
What happens next?
He said that he hoped that I had more vases because he pulled out 2 more dozen. I believe they were like pink roses.
How many roses in total did he give you?
3.
3 dozen?
Yes.
Did you do something with them?
At that point, I put them in some water.
And did the defendant still have 1 rose left?
Yes.
What happened with the 1 rose?
I asked what he had laid the rose, a single rose, down on the table, and I asked him what that rose was for. And he said that he was glad that I asked, and that there was a story that he was going to tell me that while he was in San Francisco, that's where he said he had been or was coming from San Francisco. That either it was a dream or a thought, I don't recall at this point, that he was going to share with me about this single rose.
Just to back up through that, you were telling us before that he wasn't sure he was going to make it because he had business. When he got there, the defendant, did he tell you what had happened with his business trip on the 14th?
That it was still proceeding, but that he was going to be able to get away to attend the formal with me, but he had to return the next day.
When he showed up at your house, is that when he told you that, or had that been on a phone call?
I believe it was a conversation on a phone call.
And when he got to your house and he comes in with these roses, does he tell you further information about the business trip?
No, not a great deal, no.
Just other than he had been able to get away?
Yes.
And he starts to tell you this story about the rose. Does he start to do something with the rose?
Yes.
What does he do?
He asked me if I had a candle and some scissors, and he cut the
Okay, this is your first Q&A time, writing at 225 words per minute. Your proper names are Mrs. Blaine, Jan, Kent, A2 Dependent Children, Tampa, Florida, Winnipeg, Tampa, Kmart, Franklin Street, and Mr. Dietz. Ready? Mrs. Blaine, you mentioned that in the spring of 1983, when Jan was on crutches and you went into detail as to all the bad things, did Jan complain to you?
No, she did not.
Did she complain to you in any of this large stack of letters of the terrible treatment she was getting?
Occasionally, she would remark on things that happened down there, things that were said to her, things that had been said to her, things that had happened. She would occasionally write about them. She didn't write a great deal.
You have read those letters, and I sure don't want to go through the whole stack of letters, but isn't it true the bulk of the complaints included in that stack of letters are complaints so far as Jan and her relationship to her mother-in-law?
The bulk of her complaints?
Yes.
No, I really and truly couldn't say that.
Whatever complaints, what I am trying to say, whatever complaints there are in these letters, do most of those complaints relate to bad things that Kent was doing or bad things that her mother-in-law was doing?
To tell the truth, I can't remember. I have read the letters just recently. Like you say, it is a large stack of letters. I can't remember everything that was in all of them.
In any event, following this visit in the spring of 1983, the next letter that she wrote to you didn't have any complaints about things that Kent was doing.
Apparently not.
You said you and Kent never had words together?
No, not that I can ever recall.
Did you ever tell Kent you thought he was doing things the wrong way so far as?
No, sir. It wasn't my place.
So whatever terrible things were happening, they weren't so terrible that you felt called upon to bring it to anyone else's attention?
If I felt that my daughter was threatened with bodily harm, I would have done something, yes.
Now, Jan said they didn't have any problems with Kent's activities in the band.
As far as I know.
She never complained to you about the activities in the band?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
She never complained about the fact he was working too hard and had to stay away from home too much?
No.
Never complained about the fact that he was doing all that work?
No, she was quite proud.
As a matter of curiosity, what did she complain about? Why did this marriage break up, or do you know?
Jan did tell me a lot of things.
But you can't recall specifically right now?
I am trying. I really am. I'm sorry. Well, I am afraid you are going to have to ask her that.
You don't remember any specific complaints that Jan had when she came home?
Yes, I am sorry. I wish I could remember some of the things she told me.
All right, let's leave that. Jan lived with you for about a year?
Yes.
Tell me about the circumstances of her leaving your home.
Well, she just decided it was time for her to go out and make a life of her own.
And what kind of realistic plans did she have for going out and making a life of her own?
In what way?
Did you have any discussion with her about how she was going to get along?
She was on Aid to Dependent Children.
She was on Aid to Dependent Children?
Just before she left, she went on it, as far as I can remember, and we offered to help her out if necessary.
And this was all right with you that she went off and lived on welfare?
I cannot say that it was completely all right with me. I thought that she should remain at home. We had been helping her. We had paid tuition at college, and while we were not well-to-do, we did the best we could.
Did she make any effort to be employed?
Yes, she did.
Was she employed?
No, she was not employed.
She went to Tampa, Florida?
Yes.
Who was she living with in Tampa, Florida?
As far as I knew, she and a man were living together.
As far as you knew?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever go and visit her?
No, I never did.
You never went to see her in Tampa, Florida?
No.
How long did she stay in Tampa, Florida?
Well, she went up there, I believe, about April or May, and she stayed that summer. And I believe she moved.
Your testimony is you never visited your daughter in her home.
No, I didn't.
Where did she go from there?
In the fall, last fall, I believe she moved in with some friends of hers.
You know the address?
The address? Winnipeg. Was that 453?
Isn't it true she had two different addresses before she got to Winnipeg?
I don't know.
You don't know?
As far as I knew, she lived in Tampa, Florida.
You really didn't know your daughter's whereabouts for months of the time from May until she got to, well, until just recently.
I didn't know. She always called me.
But you were telling me you didn't know she was in two other addresses.
Before.
Between the time she lived in Tampa and prior to the time she got to the Winnipeg address. Perhaps I should indicate to you Your husband has previously testified there were 2 other addresses in between, and you were telling me you didn't know she had 2 other addresses in between?
No, I know she lived in Tampa, and then she moved in with a friend of hers over by Kmart. Then she moved in with some other people.
Did she ever live with a couple for a while?
Yes.
That was in Winnipeg?
I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Did you ever visit Jan at the Winnipeg address?
No.
How about the Franklin Street address?
That's right. I believe it was.
How long has she been living with Mr. Dietz?
Well, I learned she has apparently been living with him for about 10 months.
When did you first learn that?
When I spoke with another person.
That was the first time you learned she had been living with Mr. Dietz?
Yes, sir.
And that was when? Within the last 3 weeks?
Oh, yes, sir.
Did you and your daughter have an argument at the time she left your home to go off and live in the town of Tampa?
No, it really wasn't an argument. I would have preferred she stay at home, but she felt she just...
Okay, this is your second Q&A time, writing at 225 words per minute. Your proper names are Jan Jones, West End Drive, James Jones Jr., James Jones, San Antonio, Jad Jr., Mrs. Jones, James, Red Rocks, and Holiday Inn. Ready? Please state your name and address.
Jan Jones, 1900 West End Drive.
How old are you?
22.
I take it you are the plaintiff in this lawsuit?
Yes.
You are the mother of James Jones Jr.?
Yes, I am.
The wife of James Jones?
Yes.
I take it from prior testimony that you spent a large portion of your childhood in San Antonio?
Yes, I did.
From what years?
I think the total period of time was 8 years.
During that period, did you come to know James Jones?
Yes, I did.
And what was your relationship?
We went steady.
During this period of going steady, did the 2 of you engage in intercourse?
Yes, we did.
And you recall the particular incident that gave rise to the birth of Jad Jr.?
I conceived.
Do you remember the intercourse?
Yes, I do.
Now, when did you realize that you became pregnant, Mrs. Jones?
I believe it was around the last of April or the 1st of May.
April of 1982 or early May?
Right.
Then did you tell your steady?
Yes.
Did you tell your parents?
I think my mother kind of gathered it because I had been out of school a couple of mornings with morning sickness, and she kind of gathered from that, and I told her I probably was.
Had your father been transferred to this city by that time?
Yes, sir.
Did you and your mother join your father up here?
Yes, we did.
How long did you stay up here?
I guess it was just about a year altogether, from the time we moved here in June of 1983 until after we were married. And then I moved down there to set up housekeeping with him.
Now, when were the 2 of you married?
December 27, 1982.
About 8 or 8.5 months from the time you realized you were pregnant?
Right.
Why did it take so long?
Because my husband couldn't decide whether he wanted to marry me or not. He felt that every time he talked about it, he felt that he would only, so my child would have a name. And I kept telling him no, it was because I loved him and I wouldn't have gotten pregnant unless I had loved him. But he couldn't accept that.
Did he finally accept it in December?
I don't know whether he really accepted it or not, but I decided the best thing to do if we weren't was to give up my child for adoption, because I felt like that I alone couldn't give him a complete home without us being married.
So you were married in December, and when was the baby born?
January 13, 1983.
You stayed up here for approximately 6 months?
Right. I completed high school.
In June, then you joined James?
Yes, sir.
And where was James at that time?
In San Antonio.
How long did you stay in San Antonio?
I think it was until about early December of 1983.
While you were in San Antonio for approximately those 6 months or so, did you have any marital difficulties? Was anything going wrong significantly?
Well, I don't really think significantly. I think we were having a hard time adjusting to each other because we were so young and we quarreled some. I don't think anything really significant was going on at that time.
Did anything happen to make you suspect that James was not entirely faithful to you?
Yes, I never wanted to tie him down, and I never wanted to tell him he couldn't. He can do anything he wanted to, and that was fine with me. And one night he was at the country club.
As a result of this, did you do anything foolish?
No, I didn't. We talked it over. I think he was more upset about it than I was, but I decided to let it pass.
Did you go out to the country club shortly thereafter?
Yes, I did.
Why?
For revenge.
Did you tell James that you were going?
Yes, I did. I told him the next week when he did that, well, I'm going out to Red Rocks. And he says, no, you're not. I said, you watch me. I meant I was. I think he was more upset about it, but I told him I was going.
And what happened that night?
Nothing. We just went out there.
Who is we?
I and another couple. We just went out there together. It was not a date, and we went out there and listened to the shows and then came home.
Did you come back early or late?
It was pretty late.
Like about what time?
It was about 4 o'clock, I think, something like that, because the place didn't close until 4.
Did anything happen to anyone's car that night?
Yes. His oil pan, he ran over a rock and it got a leak in it, and it burned up his engine because all the oil leaked out.
Where did that happen?
It was on the way back. It is on an old country road, and we were coming, and there was this big rock in the middle of the road.
Did you see that man the next day?
Yes. I went by to see how his car was doing. He said the engine burned up.
Did you have any relationship with him that day?
No, I did not.
Would you say you might have been flirting?
I don't think there was too much flirting. I think we joked. No, I don't think there was any serious flirting.
Now try to remember how long this was after the time you came down to San Antonio.
I'd say about 4 months, I think.
In your first 4 months together?
Right. The first time alone together.
While you and James were in San Antonio, did he get in any kind of little band or anything?
He and others had a little combo, just the two of them.
Okay. Did they play any particular place?
Yes, they played at the Red Rocks after we had obtained it. And I think they played at the Holiday Inn for a week and maybe a few other places. I don't remember the names.
There have been charges that you frequented the Red Rocks while you